You're listening to
and such a short amount of time to do it in. We were really
a Mamamia podcast.
From Mamamia, you're listening to No Filter, a podcast where people from all walks of life tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be vulnerable. My name is Mia Friedman. In the next 40 minutes, you're going to hear a story of gender, identity, career, fame, family, sexuality, love, change, and acceptance. And the person at the centre of this story is right on the precipice of major stardom. No pressure. Zoe Terakes is just 21 and they identify as non-binary and trans-masculine. You would have seen Zoe on your screen or on the stage, maybe in the ABC's Janet King or Wentworth, or more recently in 9 Perfect Strangers. You may even have caught their award-winning performance in A View from the Bridge. They've had to come out a number of times for a number of different reasons, but there's one coming out that was much harder than the rest, and it took their parents totally by surprise. Now, before I share this conversation with you, I have to explain something. The questions that I asked Zoe were really personal, and they're not the kinds of questions you should ever just bowl up and ask a trans, gay, or non-binary person. I made sure that Zoe and I established boundaries for our conversation way before we jumped on Zoom to record this interview. Zoe said that they were an open book, but I gave them every chance to draw and redraw those boundaries before, during, and after this interview. It was crucial to me, it always is with these interviews, but it was particularly crucial to me that they felt comfortable and that I didn't just knock down those boundaries with my curiosity. You'll see what I mean when you start listening. Anyway, I went into this conversation just knowing it was going to be a cracker. Here's my chat with Zoe. I spoke to your mum and she told me that your trans-masc, non-binary journey was not a surprise to her in the slightest, but the acting thing blew her away, completely shocked her. So it sounds like it was a bigger deal coming out as an actor than it was any other type of coming out that you had to do. What was your coming out journey like?
As trans?
All the different coming out that you did. I mean,
yeah, there was a couple. There was like gay, actor, trans, non-binary, trans, yeah.
It was a journey. So tell me about that progression.
Yeah, I came out, my mum actually asked me when I was 15, I used to hang out with my friend Jack, who was gay, and we just were in love with each other and spent every day together, every weekend together, and would play only gay songs and wear, rainbow badges and smoke cigarettes in the backyard. Mum was picking me up from Jack's house one day and was like, Zoe, are you confused? And I was like, bitch, you beat me to it. I was begging her to ask me. I was basically had I'm gay tattooed on my forehead, And she was beautiful about it and so accepting and didn't, encourage me not to race to label myself, not to draw a line in the sand that was unchanging because I was so young, and I respect her for doing that. And, told me that it's harder being gay in the world and that she was worried for my safety, but she loved me for me. It doesn't matter. And my mum is, so chill about that stuff. She's a legend, as you know. And then when I told her that I wanted to get into acting, I think she just didn't want me to break my own heart,
Yeah.
Mum, I understand that.
Because the chance of success is so small.
It's so small, and you don't want your kid to be thrown into something where they're probably going to be told terrible things about themselves or not have their self-worth confirmed or validated.
Because it's about missing out on roles, not getting chosen for 100 different reasons.
90% rejection.
Yeah. No one chooses that for their child.
No. And so I think it was terrifying for her, and also just felt unrealistic and how was I ever going to make money? How was I ever going to support myself, or do it even?
When you talk about the labels and what she said about don't rush to put a label on yourself, I've heard both sides of this. I've heard that that's a common reaction among parents when their kids come out. And I've also heard that some kids find that really offensive because it's like, don't tell me this is a phase. This is who I am and this is what I know about myself. How would you advise a parent to handle it?
I think I understand why parents say it, and my mum said it again with the non-binary thing, the trans thing, just don't put yourself in a box. And I said to her when she said it that time, I was like, Mum, I haven't been wrong yet. And she was like, oh. I was like, I was right last time. And she really heard me and was like, yeah, you were. And who am I to say you're not? I have a fucking extraordinary mum and dad, and I'm really lucky. But I would say to parents that if you can avoid saying it, do. I think just take your kid as they're showing up and also understand it's a gift they're giving you in telling this thing about them to you. It's an honor that they feel safe enough with you or brave enough to give you this information. And so I think honor that with the dignity and respect that they have, and see it as a blessing and as a sign that your kid feels safe with you,
Telling someone else is one thing, but understanding it yourself obviously comes way before that. What's been your progressive understanding about your sexual and gender identity?
It doesn't stop, I don't think. I think that's what nobody tells you that at the start. I kind of wish that, no, I don't wish. I call it like the gender void, and it feels like you fall down a hole and then nobody tells you that you never actually get back out the hole. And I feel like when I started thinking about gender, which was, end of 2018, that just never stopped. And I think it's accepting that, for me personally, I don't think I will ever arrive at a destination with my gender. I think it is always changing. And there are times when I don't think about it as much. Like I'm going through a period where I don't really think about it at the moment, which is really nice. It's nice to have a break from it. And then there are times where all I can think about is my gender and what it is and what it's becoming and what it was. And, and it's a head fuck. I'm kind of enjoying the hiatus at the moment.
Yeah. Is the goal gender neutral sort of thing where it's just not something you have to think about, it's just you're just Zoe?
Yeah, I don't mind when I think about it a lot. Like it doesn't phase me. It's kind of cool when you go like, oh, cool, I'm entering that part of my life where gender's a part of the conversation with myself again. But at the moment, it's just not part of the conversation with myself. I feel like I've got other things I'm trying to work out with myself at the moment. It just comes in and out of your life, and it's like a limb, it's just a part of you that you tend to when it needs tending to, I think. Like I kind of get what my mum was saying, because my relationship with gender is one that I am constantly having to reassess and find new words for and new labels for. Like I was identifying with she, they for months. And then that felt really wrong. And then when I was 18, 19, I was like, no, I think it's just they, them. And then non-binary didn't feel like enough suddenly. And so then I kind of started using transmasculine as words for myself. And that felt really good. And, I don't know where it's going to go next. It's kind of just got to let it unfold as it does, I guess.
Tell me about the difference between queer, transmasc and non-binary, how those three things interrelate but are distinctive.
I think queer is like a way of being. Like it's a way of looking at the world. It feels like a lens, like there's your sexuality, like I'm gay, but then being queer is like, yeah, it feels like a pocket of the world. Like you can pick a queer person, man. Like we just find each other, and you have a way of talking to queer people. And there's like gay people and there's queer people. I think they're different things.
How are they different to you?
Energetically. There's like, the like white Surrey Hills gays. I'm such a bitch.
So I understand the difference between, and forgive me for asking a pedestrian question.
No.
Queer, does that mean more fluid than gay?
No, I think queer is the gay people who haven't left everyone else behind. And like, I know some people crucify me for saying this shit. Like, I know a lot of people get fucking angry about it, but I do think queer people are people who have not forgotten about trans people and people of color. That's not to say, like, I identify as gay. Gay is a great word. I am all for the word gay, but that would be my distinguisher in terms of looking at queer as a lens, you know.
The non-binary?
Non-binary is, I mean, it's such a different experience for everybody, for every non-binary person. I don't think there's two non-binary people who have the same experience of gender, but I guess it's sitting outside or between the gender binary. Like going, I acknowledge gender binary and I fit somewhere in between those two things, or I choose to disregard the gender binary entirely and I don't believe it exists and I sit like an alien on the outside. That's how I think non-binary is.
Because as someone binary, I don't think about my gender much. At least I don't think I think about my gender much. But being non-binary, obviously, or not obviously, but does it mean you just don't feel like you fit entirely with either one?
Yeah, for me personally, I don't feel like a girl at all. Like no part of me feels like a girl.
Did you ever?
No. Like when I was a kid, no. Like I was always Batman, never anything else. Batman, Spider-Man. Like, and then I think I tried really hard to feel like a girl through high school. I put in a lot of effort into trying to feel like a girl.
Tell me about that. You had very long hair.
Yeah, I had very long hair. I always knew I was gay, but I was very femme presenting for a couple of years there, like years 7, 8, 9, you know, kind of all through high school, I guess. Like I went through a bit of a mask phase and I was trying stuff out, but you don't see it as any other option. You just wear what everybody else wears, you know, because you don't want to be fucking weird.
Were you out at school?
Like I think I always was, but I didn't go, oh, that's what that was. That's why I like the movie Chicago so much. Like, so I was in year 8 and then I came out year 9. I was one of the first in my year, if not the first, I can't really remember. But so many people came out after. Like I had the gayest year ever. It was great. But yeah, I think I was 14 when I came out.
And then the trans mask, where does that fit in?
For me, I mean, again, everybody defines it differently. But for me, that kind of speaks to the part of my gender that I know sits more on the masculine side. Like I feel like a boy a lot of the time and I never feel like a girl. But it doesn't fully make me a man. I don't fully think I'm a man. I love it when people mistake me for a man. It's my favorite thing. It's like somebody's giving me a hug. But I don't fully identify with being a man. I don't know about he pronouns. It's like something I think about. I don't know if I'll arrive there one day. It doesn't feel like it right now, but who knows? Since finding that language to describe myself, I don't know, it's really interesting. I went through a phase around like 2019 when I first came out as trans, where like I'd only wear black and I'd sit in a certain way and I'd like really lower my voice and I, you know, like just behaved in like icky, gross, toxically masculine ways, like, you know, like fucked around a lot, like just like shitty icky stuff, because that's what I felt like masculinity was. And then suddenly when I found the label trans masculine and kind of came into myself a bit more and cut my hair in a way that I wanted to wear my hair, and I suddenly went, oh no, I know I'm a guy. So I don't really give a fuck whether you think I am, because I know I am. And it just was so liberating. It was so liberating. I started dressing how I want. I started realizing that like I'm such a camp person. Like it's such a big part of who I am, you know? And I was like, I want to be like a femme hot guy like Harry Styles. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And Leo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's something beautifully feminine about those men.
Yeah. Young Leo. Not so much now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I arrived at, is that that's the kind of guy I want to be, you know.
And how does it impact on your work in terms of the roles that you go for, conversations with your agent, your aspirations for acting? It's
interesting because my favorite plays are still the classics. Like Antony and Cleopatra is one of my favorite plays of all time. Streetcar Named Desire. You know, like I love Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams, and I want to do those plays more than I want to do anything else really in the world. And I want to play girls in those plays. I also want to play some of the guys in those plays. Like I understand as a trans person also, I'm very privileged to be a trans person that can pass for a guy and also pass for a girl. That is not the truth for a lot of trans people, and I do not wear that privilege lightly. Like, I'm fucking lucky in that regard, you know, because of that privilege. I do, I want to.
You have more options, so you can go up for both roles.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of widened the horizon of what I can do, because suddenly everyone goes, oh yeah, you kind of are like a guy. Well, we can just get you to play this guy role. And like guys that aren't even necessarily trans. Like I've just played boys, which has been so nice, you know, and really gender affirming. And then also I struggle sometimes with playing girls. I find it harder, but I also have found a way in that's like I just approach it for the character, not for their gender, you know, because I can't relate on that level. But there's always something you can relate to in a person, you know, and so I find my way in through that.
I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter with Zoe Terakes. Tell me about the first audition that you did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was for Janet King. That was the first audition that I ever did. I was so terrified.
How old were you?
16, and I was doing my year 11 exams. I was busy. Yeah, I was so scared, and I got into the audition room, and there was like, you know, all these actors that just looked so trained and so professional, and I had like sweat patches up the wazoo.
How do you even get to the audition room? Like, how do you get an agent when you're 16 years old? How do you even know about an audition for a big TV show?
I was doing drama in school, and then a professional actor came to my school and plucked me out and
discovered you.
Yeah, sort of. I started going to his classes, and then he introduced me to an agent who was my agent before the one I have now. And then that agent, before he signed me, was like, why don't you just do this audition as a practice, see how you go, because you might hate it, and then we don't have to do any of the paperwork stuff. I was like, cool, great. And then that was Janet King. That was that audition.
So what did you get sent? What did you know about the part?
This role was rough as guts, working class, didn't take shit from anyone, fearless. I was like, good. So I have to go there and pretend to have no fear. Yeah, and I remember in the audition, the director was there, and he asked me if I smoked cigarettes, and I didn't know what the right answer was. I was like, I do. Is it helpful if I reveal this now? That was after I'd forgotten all my lines.
Do they give you a lot of lines to say? Like, did you have to memorize a lot?
Yeah, like a decent amount of pages. Well, I mean, I tried my best, and then I got in there and they all left me. So scary, because I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't have any training. I didn't have any of the etiquette. So I just like stayed in character and called for line, which I now know is the right thing to do.
What does that mean, call for line?
When you drop your line and you say line, and then somebody feeds you the line.
Oh.
Yeah, I think sheer terror made some cool stuff happen.
What's the difference between auditioning for something and actually then doing it? Is it a different kind of nerves?
Yeah, I get more terrified to do it than to audition for it, because there's more pressure. Like, they've picked you, you know, so don't fuck it up because they picked you. Like, on every job I have, I get, particularly Wentworth. I was so afraid with Wentworth. I thought they were going to take the job away from me or something. I just had this weird fear of like, oh God, what if they figure it out and they've made the wrong decision, and, you know, like full imposter syndrome stuff. Because I think in an audition, it's such a small amount of time and such a small amount of performance that you have to give, that I sometimes feel like I've tricked them into giving me the part. And I'm like, no, but when you really see me, you won't want me. Which, you know, that's what therapy's for, babe.
I once heard Nicole Kidman say that after she gets a role, she then spends the time between getting the role and shooting starting trying to convince the director to cast someone else.
Vibe. That's a vibe.
Is that a vibe?
Yeah, that's a vibe. Yeah, I get it. I don't know if I'd go that far, because like I want the job, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I personally am riddled with self-doubt in that time.
You've been on a lot of sets now, but if you can take your mind back to when you were on that first day of shooting on Janet King, through the eyes of a newbie, what was it like?
The main thing I remember is I'd never experienced, you know, that thing when you're doing something you love and time goes so quickly. Or like when you're with somebody you're in love with and you just feel like the clock is going too quick. Like that's what it felt like. I remember I would rock up at like 6 a.m. and then I'd think it would be like 11 a.m. and it was like 5 p.m. And I was like, man, no, like it was going too quickly. Like I just couldn't get enough of it. And I couldn't believe how fast time was going. Yeah, just that like sheer excitement, and every conversation felt like a window, like an opportunity or an opening. Because all these people, I was 16 and around like people who are now some of my closest friends, but then were just like gods to me, and they saw the world in a way that I wanted to see the world, and they spoke in a way that I wanted to speak. And I was just so awestruck and inspired every day.
Logistically, what surprised you? I've never been on a movie set or a set of a TV show. What did you think, I didn't expect this?
I didn't expect the hair and makeup thing. I kind of forgot that actors wore hair and makeup, and I didn't realize that you have to spend like, half an hour to an hour every morning getting a face on, and nobody tells you. I mean, nobody told me about the hitting your mark stuff or the not looking down the barrel of the camera stuff, like all this technical stuff that I just hadn't learned. And so when somebody was like, okay, so you just have to, on that line, walk and talk, and then you'll hit that mark and then you say that thing there. And I'm like, I don't know how to hold all that in my head.
How do you hit a mark? So are there marks actually on the floor?
The marks are on the floor, yeah. And then you just do a cheeky look down. I do a cheeky look down. Some people don't have to because they have amazing spatial awareness. I do not have that gift. Also, continuity, that's something that still trips me up. Like if you cross your arms on one take, you got to cross them again on the next one on the same line. Not going to happen.
I've always wondered about that. So is there someone on set to say, hey, Zoe, tuck your hair behind your other ear or whatever it is?
Yep, which is hellish. They're just doing their job and they're doing such a good job of it. But I think I make it very hard.
And how many times do you have to do something?
Well, it depends. Like those big group scenes in any show, like in Wentworth, in Nine Perfect Strangers, they take forever because there's so much coverage to get. So you have to get each person. In like a two-hander or something, it just depends. Sometimes you get it in a couple takes. Like it can be quite quick, particularly, two-hander scenes. But yeah, in a group scene, forget about it. That's half a day.
And in a group scene, does everyone have to deliver their lines? So they film one person at a time, do they?
One or two, yeah.
And so does everyone have to deliver their lines each time? So maybe there's 5 people in the group or 8 people in the group. Yeah. Even if you're not being filmed, you have to deliver your lines. Do you have to deliver them well, or can you sort of phone it in?
The nice thing to do is to go to as much effort for somebody else's take as you would for your own, because it's really nice when people do that for you and like give you a solid performance so you have something to bounce off. So I think it's like, the right thing to do.
How do you teach yourself to cry? Are there tricks? Do you use onions?
No. I had to cry in Janet King and I was so scared. I spent like the night before just in the bathroom being like, come on. And the tears weren't coming. I was like, think about your dog dying. Think about your dog. Oh, it's not happening. Yeah, on Janet King, I found it hard. I think because I was so green. But theatre taught me how to do that. Once I started doing theatre, I don't know what it is. There's just, I think the immediacy of theatre, how all-consuming theatre is. And it's like a ghost. Like I feel like a theatre character or a play is like a ghost that inhibits you for the time you're doing the show and then leaves you when you're done. And so I find it much easier to be immersed in a play.
Because you're doing it in real time as well, aren't you? You're not stopping and starting.
And you're feeding off somebody like, it just goes. You don't have to stop and start and do it again. You just start and you get in flow, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, when I did theatre, that's when that stuff started to happen. And then you kind of, from that, learn how to take it into film.
Is there a trick to it?
Some actors use Tiger Balm.
So you just like touch your eye like that?
Yeah.
With a bit of Tiger Balm on it?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of actors do it on stage and you notice them do it. And like no shade, like it works and it looks like it.
Do you have to think of something sad?
If the scene is sad, I mean, sometimes I fake it. Everybody fakes it sometimes. I'm not that good of an actor. But
like orgasms?
No.
No, we don't fake orgasms.
Yeah, we don't
not
fake them.
Good.
Yeah.
No. We also don't. Also, that was a flippant remark because no woman should fake an orgasm because it doesn't do her or her partner a service.
Ever. Absolutely. But you can fake crying sometimes.
Yeah.
And I do it. So there's just days where you're just like, oh, it's not coming. Fuck it. Phone it in. But then sometimes when it does come, it's like, oh, rad. Thank you, for showing up.
What about staying in character when you're filming in a TV show or a movie?
I mean, I don't stay in character. I think there's honoring the tone of the scene, while you're in it. And like, I know in Wentworth, like we had to do some pretty full-on scenes, and there's a kind of this unspoken thing that falls over the cast and crew when you're doing a scene that deserves a bit of dignity, and then the actors will choose when they want to come out of it, so if it's a really heavy scene, you kind of stay in it together a little bit, and then at the end you crack a joke and everybody laughs, and it's, and then it gets really fun and playful and everyone's trying to cheer each other up from how brutal it was. But yeah, no, I don't think I stay in character per se.
I was reading an interview with Imelda Staunton on the weekend, and she's playing the Queen in the next season of The Crown, and she's an incredible actress on stage and on screen. And she was bemoaning this idea of how sometimes she'll be with a younger scene partner, and at the end of this filming a scene, they'll pick up their phone and look at their phone. And she's like, that's really disrespectful to your scene partner. Why can't you just experience what you've experienced in the scene? Is that kind of what you mean about not breaking out of character too quickly?
I think so. That's exactly what I mean. I think you just hold it for a bit, and stay with the person you're going to a vulnerable place with and stay in that place with them. And then, when all's said and done, then you break it and have a laugh. I don't necessarily mean you go and call your mum. But yeah, I think should be a little bit of reverence around it, because you tend to be going to dark places,
I was looking at your CV, and you've won a lot of awards for Best Actress, Best Female Newcomer, Best all of those things. How do you feel when you look at that?
I was out as non-binary when The Helpmans, when I got nominated for Best Female Supporting Actor in a play for A View from the Bridge. And that one, I think I was able to justify it because I was like, well, I'm playing a girl. I was playing, a 1950s girl. That's fine. That's okay. But I think now going forward, it's a conversation I had with my agents and some people recently, is that, if the system doesn't fit people like us, in awards and stuff, it's very binary. And so we have to find a way of making the system work for us. And so I kind of just said, well, I think the response I have when somebody calls me an actress makes me feel physically sick. When somebody calls me an actor, I'm like, yeah, I am an actor. And when somebody calls me a girl, I want to cry. When somebody calls me a boy, I feel beautiful. And so by that logic, then I should be put forward in Best Male Actor category, And so that's kind of a decision I made recently. Just instead of keeping on flipping, I don't want to do it by the character because nobody else does it by the character. Eddie Redmayne wasn't nominated for Best Female Actor, when he played a trans woman. Until they figure out a better way of doing it, that's how I'm going to make it work, I think.
You never realise how sort of antiquated systems are or how much they need updating. There must be a million things you come across every day. It's like I still go into a rage if I'm filling out a form and there's not a Ms. option. And I'm like, I'm not a Miss or a Mrs. Fuck off. And you must encounter that all the time. Does it get tiring pushing against it all the time?
I mean, me personally, I just pick my battles. There's some beautiful productions I've been on that every plane I get on, they'll book it as Dr. Zoe Terakes because there's no gender neutral option. I personally can't be fucked with that stuff. And I just say, Miss.
Professor will do.
Yeah,
Doctor.
Fine.
Yeah.
Captain. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think I just pick which things to invest in because otherwise you just run out of puff and you get burnt out, and that's not going to help anybody, particularly not the community you're fighting for.
You've been outspoken about there needing to be not just more trans actors in front of the camera, but more trans crew, hair and makeup artists, costume designers. And you've spoken about how often there'll be hair and makeup artists who won't understand how to do different coloured skin or different textured skin, or there'll be costume designers who won't understand about binding or packing. Can you explain binding and packing?
Mm-hmm. Binding is something that I do, and a lot of non-binary trans people do, and it is the process of strapping your boobs down. And there's a really dangerous way of doing that, which is with ace bandages, and you can break ribs doing it that way. Like, it's terrible, and it can do like really permanent damage. And then there's binders, and they're like these things you slip on. You can order them online, and they just flatten everything out.
Do they hurt?
Yeah, like fuckery. I'm not wearing one at the moment. I locked down, wear sports bras. Yeah, it took me so long to get used to. I'm a smoker as well, so the combination of binding and smoking, your lungs aren't too happy.
Is it like a really, really tight sports bra?
It's like wearing a corset.
But for your boobs?
For your boobs. I found it really hard to breathe at first. I mean, the worse your dysphoria is, the tighter you want to bind. So like when I would go to awards ceremonies and stuff, I would wear like something 2 sizes too small, and you know, you feel like you're going to faint. It's terrible. You should always wear your size of binding. It's really unsafe to do anything otherwise. And packing is something I don't do, not at the moment anyway, which is where you pack your undies with a penis. And tucking is where you strap your penis back so it looks like you don't have one.
So these are all things that you do so that you don't have to have surgery? Or because you don't want to have surgery?
No, not necessarily. They're just things that if you don't have access to surgery at the moment, or, you know, some people don't even want to get surgery. They just do these things as forever things. But they're just ways of alleviating dysphoria and of making sure.
Can you explain what dysphoria is?
Gender dysphoria is feeling uncomfortable in your body or your voice or just your skin because of things that are gender related. I experienced dysphoria with my chest and my hips, and fortunately nothing else.
So it can be localized to a body part.
Yeah. Or it can just be general energy. Like some days when you just wake up and you're like, oh, fuck, I feel like a girl today. But I think, yeah, these are ways of alleviating dysphoria.
Tell me how the reaction of girls and women has changed as you've changed your appearance. Because when we did our live the other day, I can't tell you how thirsty people were for you. Like, particularly so-called straight girls were thirsting for you in a very open way. Is that disconcerting or is that flattering? What's that like?
I don't know. I find it a bit funny. I think I still have a bit of imposter syndrome with that stuff. I'm like, what? I don't know. I find it, yeah, flattering. But if it's from straight women, I take it with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? I'm like, yes, I know I am the closest thing to a guy that isn't a guy. You know, I feel like I have been in my life a lot of straight women's training wheels, or my friend calls it the tour bus, which is what, you know, you hop on, see if you like it, hop off. Yeah, as a lot of masculine people encounter.
I've heard Abby Wambach say that. She is,
I love her.
Isn't she the best? She's my hall pass. I think she's so hot. She has said straight women find her very confusing because they'll be like, I've never been attracted to a woman before, but I really am attracted to you. And so she was saying in most of her physical relationships, often with straight women, she'll have to sort of be the teacher and the instigator and all of that kind of thing. And she was saying that when she got together with Glennon, her now wife, it was the other way around. And Glennon was like, hey, I'm going to take care of you. And she said it was such a surprise.
Sick.
Yeah, which I thought it was very funny conversation listening to them on their podcast talking about their sex life. But do you find that, like, who are you attracted to? Forget about who's attracted to you.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Up until recently, it was always straight people. I think that was kind of coming from a place of self-hatred in a way. It feels like quite a harsh thing to say. I think it was coming, that thing I was talking about earlier about when I wanted to feel like a guy in a really toxic way. I felt like if I had a straight girl on my arm, the people would look at me as a guy because I'm like, no, look, see, I am like, and it was some fucked up kind of, you know, validation. But now it's pretty much always femme people, but I really like mean pretty girls. You know, people who like look so pretty that it's kind of mean, but also are so mean it's pretty. I'm like a real sucker for that. I'm like, oh, you're such a bitch. It's so hard. Yeah.
So as your gender identity has evolved, your sexual identity has stayed as gay and being attracted to girls?
I think there's been moments. Adam Driver.
Oh.
Jesus Christ.
You and I have all the same taste.
Like, it's so weird because it's like femme girl,
Yeah.
femme girl, femme girl. Adam Driver, femme girl, femme girl, you know.
Yeah.
Something
Abby
about him.
Wambach.
Yeah. Like,
Adam Driver.
he could just do what he wants.
Yeah.
He's just so much of it. I just want, like, I'm like, if I'm going to bottom for anyone, it's going to be Adam Driver. You know what I mean? I'm like, strict top, not for you, Adam. I'll be bottom. Like, he's so hot.
Anything you want.
Anything you want. There's part of me that's like, oh, I feel like a bit of a gay guy sometimes. I think if push came to shove, I'd be like, oh, get away.
Have you ever been there?
Yeah, when I was in high school, yeah, I fucked around with guys, but yeah, I never enjoyed it. Sorry if any of you are listening. Like, I could do it. I just never
Wanted to.
No, I was like, I don't see what all the fuss is about. It was like kissing a cousin or something. And then when I started kissing girls, I was like, oh, what? Yeah, but no, it's funny you asked that. No, I guess my sexuality hasn't really evolved that much. Like, I've always been gay. I've always wanted to fuck mean pretty girls. So that hasn't
And is
changed.
it different when girls hit on you now?
When I had long hair and I wasn't presenting as masculine, I used to really struggle with like getting people to know I was gay. Like, you just kind of want to wear a big sign being like, I'm gay, hit on me, please. But since dressing the way I dress now and presenting the way I present, people know, you know what I mean? Like, there's nobody wondering if I'm gay. I do my best to make sure that is known very quickly. And so I think it gives people more confidence, gives women more confidence to hit on you because they're not wondering, are you, aren't you? But I think, yeah, it's funny when you look, I was talking to my friend about this the other day, like when you look a certain way, there's an expectation that I think when I was a bit younger and less experienced and I didn't really know how to date or do any of that stuff, because I looked a certain way, there was an expectation that I would know how to do that stuff. And I was like, I need you to make the first move. But I think as I've like grown into myself and my gender and my sexuality, that, you know.
What's the difference between a top and a bottom?
Do you mean?
I mean, I know. But for those who don't know, how would you explain it?
Well, for people with penises, it's, you know, who's doing the fucking, who's doing the getting. And with people with vaginas, it's a little bit more like, I mean, there are some people who are like strictly tops and some people who are strictly bottoms, but I think it's a little bit more give and
What does it
take.
mean when there's two vaginas and there's a top and a bottom? It's the same. It's who's doing the penetrating and who's being penetrated.
What's who's being dommy and who's being subby, you know, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking from a place of ignorance. I'm not a gay man and I've never been
Neither.
one. You know, and like love them, but I don't want to be one.
No.
But I think with women and with people with vaginas, it's kind of more fluid, I think, maybe. Like, you kind of share the topping and bottoming.
And do you want to be a tour bus?
No, I mean, I did. I wasn't mad at it while it was happening.
All aboard. Can meaningful relationships start as tour buses or is it always kind of doomed?
No, I don't think so. No, I've been in a long-term relationship with somebody who had never been with women or with somebody with a vagina before. I don't think so. I think it's more when it's like straight people who you know are going to go back to being straight shortly after. It was also just not fun because they don't know what to do. Like,
Yeah,
bored.
that would
You're
be
like,
boring, yeah.
this is dull. I feel like I'm in high school, you know. Like, it's way harder when everybody's having fun and knows what they're doing, you know.
I wanted to finally ask you about acting. We're back to that. Remember acting? What's the power imbalance like on a big set like with 9 Perfect Strangers when you've got people of Nicole Kidman's level and Melissa McCarthy who are like the big Hollywood stars, and then you've got sort of Regina and Bobby Cannavale, and then you've got people who are famous but only in Australia like Asha or Samara who's crossing over, and then there's people like you who are on the way up and about to go major. So there's all these different generations and different levels of fame. Is everyone equal on a set, or, I mean, how can you sort of be equal with Melissa McCarthy or Nicole?
People are spoken to differently. You know, like people aren't going to talk to Nicole Kim in the same way they're going to talk to me, nor would I expect them to.
Right. So it's like, we need to do lighting, stand here. Can you redo that scene? Do you mean like that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a vibe, but also it also depends on the actors, because Nicole and Melissa and Bobby and Regina and Michael, Luke, all of those people, none of them are big ego-y actors. Like they make you feel like they're part of the crew. Like they kind of
team players.
Yeah, big time, like real team players. And so I kind of forgot, like you forget after a little while, you're like, oh, fuck, I just remembered who you were. Like you are like an empire, you know, but you don't talk to anybody like you are. So I think it would depend on, I'm sure there's a version of that where, you know, people don't let you forget who they are, but certainly not with that cast. Like I think maybe we were just all really lucky in that regard.
And when you're an actor during a pandemic, that must be really, really hard, because it's not like you're a writer or a painter or Taylor Swift who can record 2 albums. I mean, I guess you could put on a version of Antony and Cleopatra on TikTok maybe. I don't know. How do you act when there are all these people standing between you and doing what you love to do?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's, I think, why I've discovered surfing and playing guitar, because I don't have to wait for anybody to tell me I can. I think that's the hard thing. I think that's why so many actors get frustrated, myself included, is because you have to jump through so many hoops and wait for so much approval before you're allowed to do the thing you love doing. And that sucks, you know? And so I think it's really nice and really important to have things that require nobody's approval or go ahead but your own. Yeah. I mean, I've been reading plays with my best mate in lockdown. Like that's been a bit of fun. But yeah, it's fucking shitting hard, you know? It's just weird.
I know that you were upset by some really incendiary comments Cameron McIntosh made recently about not wanting to cast trans people in any of his musicals because he said it's not part of the story. Can you talk about why you think that's bullshit?
Yeah, I think it's bullshit because it's saying, yeah, but trans women aren't really women. You know, it's like, it's that whole thing. And it's like, fuck that. How many times we have to have this conversation and fight for trans women to be seen as the real women that they are and trans men to be seen as the real men that they are. You know, like I was saying this earlier today, I feel like saying, like when I refer to women, I want to start saying, you know, women and cis women, you know, because that's how it fucking feels. Like you're not it's just women and it's just men. You know, and some happen to be trans and some happen to be cis. And your being trans should never, ever impact what jobs you get. It should enhance what jobs you get. And I think what a fucking gift it would be to have a trans Mary Poppins. Like, isn't that sick? Think of every trans kid whose life that would change, you know?
Yeah.
Because she fucking flies with an umbrella. Like, you've suspended your disbelief enough already.
Yes, because he was saying you can't ask the audience to suspend their disbelief. And it's like, dude, she's flying with an umbrella.
Come on.
She has a magic bag. Come on.
She comes down the chimney, for God's sake.
Yes. Chitty, chitty, bang, bang. It's a flying car. I think we've moved past suspending disbelief.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. You know, but yeah, and again, I bet he would defend a cis person's right to play a trans role. I bet, you know.
What do you want to play next?
I would really like to do a play. I really miss theatre, but it doesn't feel like that's going to happen anytime soon.
Is there pressure to go to Hollywood?
Yeah, I'm going to America for something that I'm not allowed to talk about properly next year.
That you're doing?
Yeah.
So you can audition for things from here because a lot of auditions happen on phones now, right? So you were telling me your audition for 9 Perfect Strangers, you just read a scene into a phone?
Yeah. But in terms of what kind of role I want to play. I think I would like to play either just a guy, like somebody who's just a guy and does know nothing about it, or if the role is trans, somebody who's being trans has nothing to do with the story. Like, it'd be cool to have a break from, very important story of being trans, but just to be able to be a character in a show like everyone else gets to be a character in a show would be cool.
Well, you're such a brilliant actor. Whoever employs you next is going to be very, very lucky to have you.
Thank you, Mia. That's very nice.
You can see more of Zoe on Amazon Prime's 9 Perfect Strangers, and also on Amazon Prime there was another movie of Zoe's that I watched. It's called Ellie and Abby, and it is a love story about 2 girls who fall in love at school. Thank you for listening to this No Filter. You can also join me, Holly Wainwright and Jessie Stevens 3 times a week on Mamamia Out Loud, our award-winning podcast where we talk about all the things that are on women's minds, wherever you get your podcasts. The assistant producer of No Filter is Lucy Neville. The executive producer is Eliza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on the Mamamia app.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.